Welcome to the latest episode of the First and Cam podcast alongside my co-host Evan. We are here back to review college football week 6, what we saw, and a lot of upsets, especially UCLA over Penn State getting their first win of the year. Just another side note, we will actually be headed to Oxford this weekend to see Washington State take on Ole Miss. Our younger brother will be playing on the D line for Washington State. We'll see what he does. He'll get some reps going against a guy that we really like to watch this year in Trinidad Chambliss. So that'll be
True freshman.
yeah,
Mm.
a fun little wake up call for him. In one of his first actions as a Washington State player, he is a true freshman. He will be going against SEC powerhouse Ole Miss. That'll be very fun. Can't wait to go to that game. Big weekend in college football. As I said, UCLA over Penn State. The AP poll has reflected that, and now we see the number one team in Texas and number two team in Penn State preseason out of the top 25 officially. But in this episode, we would like to give you guys our version of our top 10 teams, and we'll debate that, and we'll start it off right here. So, did you want to go 1 through 10, or did you want me to ramble off mine first, or how did you want to do it?
Let's go. You go your number 10, I'll go my number 10, and we'll just kind of compare.
Okay. So at number 10, I have Mizzou, who's undefeated coming off a bye week, headed for a home game against Alabama. It's going to be a huge matchup. I think Alabama is going to be favored at least by 4 or 5 points. I think Mizzou is going to be able to have a good game against them. But what they've shown so far this season, I really love. Right now, they're 14th in the AP poll, sitting at a really nice little sweet spot that Iowa State gave up after they lost. What is your take on Mizzou at number 10? Do you think they deserve it, or is it something that could kind of fluctuate as the year goes on?
No, I actually agree. I have Mizzou at 10 as well.
Mm,
I don't think that unfortunately, that South Carolina game was supposed to carry a lot more weight for them. And I was hoping that that would be a good South Carolina team that Mizzou could get over the hump of. And I think
yeah.
if that was the case, they'd be in the top 10 on the AP. But I look at them and I say, okay, I don't know that there are nine teams better than Mizzou right now. I would say that there are probably nine teams more deserving of that top 10 spot, and we'll get into that. But I like where they are. They certainly control their own destiny. They do have kind of an interesting schedule coming up with the teams that they have to play. But I do like that spot for them. Let me take a look at actually where they're going to fall. So they have Mizzou, they have Alabama this weekend, of course, huge game. They still have Auburn at Auburn. They have Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and then they close out with Oklahoma. So they have a gauntlet to come up.
Yeah.
So we'll see kind of where they fall. But I like them at 10 right now. I completely agree. That's where I have them.
So at number 9, I actually have Oklahoma, and I think they would be a little bit higher to me if Mateer was healthy. I
Mhm.
think they'd probably be around that 5 or 6 spot. But Oklahoma just looks really complete on defense, and I like what I'm seeing from them week to week. Hopefully, they get Mateer back for the Red River rivalry. I think obviously Mateer is the better quarterback than Arch Manning at this point. We will talk about him later in the episode, but that is my number 9 team.
I don't dislike that spot. I have them a little higher on my list. I'm not upset with putting Oklahoma there, especially with the hurt quarterback. They did look decent against Kent State. They didn't like they really missed a beat, so they'll figure it out. My number nine team is Indiana right
Mm.
now. The way that they played Illinois and the way Illinois has been playing, I think kind of speaks to how dominant they are. Had a little bit bump in the road against Iowa, but I really like where Indiana's sitting. I think that's probably one of the most disciplined teams in the country. They actually have a real quarterback who could do some real damage and a lot of weapons. So that's where I sit. Indiana also has an interesting schedule coming up, but I do like where they are, and I think they could also play themselves into the college football playoff at this point with Penn State and dropping the way they have.
Absolutely. On Saturday, they go to Eugene, Oregon, which will
Yeah.
be a very good quarterback matchup. Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore. I think those two guys are kind of vying for the number one QB spot in the country right now. I think the winner of that game probably propels themselves to the first in the Heisman voting, but I can't wait to see that matchup this week, and that should be good. At number 8, I have Georgia. And I know Georgia took that loss to Alabama, but I think that Alabama's a lot better than we give them credit for. I think they're obviously better than Texas. Are they better than A&M and M and Ole Miss? I don't know yet, but I really do like Georgia's makeup as a team. And right there at number 8, I think they're a lock to get in the playoffs just where they are. They may not get in the SEC championship game with the way that the chips fall, but I do like them at number 8.
I don't mind that pick at all. They are not, spoiler, in my top 10 at this point.
Mm.
They're a really good football team. They had some struggles to begin the year. Their schedule is super favorable. So they have Auburn this weekend. And then they have Ole Miss, which is a really tough game. Then they go Florida at Mississippi State. They have Texas, but it's at home. Charlotte, and they finish with a surging Georgia Tech team. So Georgia has a really favorable. I think they could easily win out, and they'll be right there in SEC championship, probably taking on a rematch of what I think would be Alabama. So I don't mind that at all. They're not on my list because I think there are 10 teams that deserve to be ranked ahead of them. But they'd probably be 11 or 12 if I was making my full list. My number eight actually is Texas Tech. The way that they're
Mm.
playing, the way that their team is structured, the way that that roster sits, they control the offensive line and the defensive line against everybody they play. And I don't know that they're going to match up with another roster as complete as theirs until the college football playoff, probably until a solid Big Ten team or a solid SEC team. And so if they handle business, they should be undefeated and win all the way out. And again, we're still early in the season, but I don't think that there's a team in the Big 12 that even I thought Utah could hang with them. And they blew Utah out of the water and just about everything. So Texas Tech is my number eight team. It's a scary team where they keep winning. And they get to the playoff, like you're not going to want to see them. The only trouble would be is if they had to go somewhere and play a cold weather team. That could be a little tricky. But right now, they're my number eight. They look really scary right now.
I don't mind that pick. They are a team that didn't touch my top 10, so I guess we'll have to just disagree on that. I just think that there's a little bit more to be desired from them, especially stacking up against the SEC and the Big Ten. I think these teams in the SEC and Big Ten are kind of beating up on each other. Meanwhile, they're in the Big 12 kind of coasting right now. I think they get some favors because of how much they spent in a transfer portal. That may not mean much to the committee, but I do think that this team was destined for greatness, and politically, they were destined to be in his top 10 to top 15 spot all year long. Best team in the Big 12 for sure. I don't think there's any doubt about that anymore.
Mhm.
But I'll be interested to see them in the playoffs. I think they reminded me a lot of last year of Clemson. They get to the playoff, and it's kind of like, all right, they're there, but we know this isn't the best team. And then Texas showed Clemson last year why.
So I don't think that that's all the way wrong. But when I look at how they have recruited and what they've done, I put it like this. There's, let me go down the list. Mizzou, Florida State, Oregon, Ole Miss, and Miami, as far as transfer portal rankings, all rank in backwards order 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Texas Tech is two. And so they recruit and they have, I think, a roster that sets up and can compete with any school in the country. Again, I think that they're going to get on the field with a team that's really good and they won't have seen that speed and physicality, but that doesn't mean they don't have the athletes to do it. They just won't have seen it. And so
That's fair.
I think they will handle business. They honestly could be higher on this list, but I think it's going to, at this point, be style points for them. I think they're going to have to win big against a lot of teams. Like they have Kansas this weekend, Arizona State, they should boat race them. And then the next ranked opponent would be BYU. So it's like we don't really take much stock into that. And so they should just thrash the entire rest of their schedule. But right now, I don't know that there are seven better teams in Texas Tech. They just are in the Big 12, so we kind of discard them a little bit.
I will give them credit that the transfer portal guys that they got are hitting for
Yes.
them, and they're
Yes.
coming through 100%. So good job to Texas Tech. I will, keep an eye out on them in the playoffs, but I'm not 100% sold yet. At number seven, I have Indiana, who has a big prove it game this weekend against Oregon. If they keep that game close, I'm not expecting them to win. I actually would expect Oregon to win by about 7 or 8 points because they're just a better team. But Fernando Mendoza, we're going to see what he's made of. This is going to be the first real, true elite defense that he's played, I think, honestly, in his career. And if he is an NFL draft guy, a first round, a top 10 pick, like he's projected to be at this point, we're going to see it on the field. And I think Indiana has the pieces. I don't think that they're better than anybody that I'm going to name this list that's in the Big Ten or in the SEC. Like I have, like Texas A&M, I think is better than them still, but Indiana has shown us that they belong inside the top 12, and they definitely are a playoff team, even if they don't go undefeated. So that is my number seven team, and I really do think that they are the second, or they're the third best team in the Big Ten to me.
Yeah, they're probably stamped at third. Michigan's pretty good too, so we'll see with
Yep.
that. My question, so Indiana is not obviously I had them a little higher on my or lower, I guess, on my list. This might be for Oregon, maybe the best quarterback they play all year.
Yeah.
And the question becomes, have they been tested? Has that secondary actually been tested? They played Montana State, Oklahoma State, Northwestern. and Oregon State. And then they played Penn State and they gave up like 14 points in the fourth quarter for that to be a overtime victory for them. So like could a Fernando Mendoza, a very like mature offensive team, could they go and cause some mayhem and force Oregon to have to score into the mid 30s and 40s? Like that would be where I would want to see some things happen now. Indiana did get kind of stuffed up against Iowa, and so that's my only concern with them
That's a good point.
going to Eugene. But other than that, I do like that pick for them. Again, that's probably a little high for me, and I think it's going to show out against Oregon. But I really do hope that they go out there and compete. And I personally would love to see Indiana take that game, especially on the road.
That's a
My
good
num-
point. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a
go
good
ahead.
point. Go ahead.
I was going to say my number seven team is Oklahoma. Just really good on defense. A Brent Venables team is always going to be good on defense, but to have the complementary piece of that offense scoring points kind of whenever they want to has been huge. Now, their schedule gets just insane, and so I don't want to put too much stock into this. These are rankings as of where they are today, not where I think they're going to be at the end of the year, based on what I've seen, especially if Mateer can't get healthy. I think Texas is, and unfortunately, it's not a ranked matchup. Like, I don't. Of the two teams, I think I would have been like, yeah, Texas is probably going to be undefeated and Oklahoma might have one loss on their schedule. And now it's completely flipped. I don't know with a backup quarterback if Oklahoma's going to be able to win that game. So it's a huge prove it point for Sark, Arch Manning, and we'll talk about them a little bit. But then they have South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, Mizzou, and then
Right.
LSU. And so it's like, holy hell. So I this might be the highest Oklahoma, maybe after in 2 weeks. This might be the highest they get ranked all year. And I just don't see them carrying themselves undefeated throughout the gauntlet that they have to play. I mean, that the remaining strength of schedule is just like I wouldn't wish
It's
that on
one of the
anybody.
toughest schedules I've ever seen a team have to get
To
in a regular
close with,
season. And for you to lose your best player, your starting quarterback, even if your starting quarterback wasn't your best player, that's just the worst timing you could possibly have for a program like that who's about to go into these games. Really, probably even if they're ranked higher, maybe a slight underdog if they're on the road.
hmm.
So I'll be interested to see what that team can do with material out. I really hope that I really want Mateer to play in Red River Rivalry, but if that's going to cause him to play through a broken hand and not really play his best, and with Texas being the team that they are right now, and Florida kind of handling him, does he kind of look at that game like I should be able to sit out this game too, and we should be all right? I wonder if Mateer's thinking that because another week of rest would be heavenly for that team, but he might think himself that he needs to be out there for them to have the best chance to win.
Well, I agree with that, and I think like let's say they sneak by Texas, which Texas is a good football team on defense at least. We'll see what that offense can do. Then they have South Carolina at South Carolina, and you would think they'd be favored probably by about 5.5, even on the road. And so like if he can get healthy and not have to play against Texas, they might be able to afford a South Carolina game without him on the road. That'd be tough, but they could. And then you'd have him healthy for your biggest games after that. I I think his hand is still in that cast. I saw that against Kent State that he was on the sidelines, but he still had that cast on. So I don't know that he's gonna be good to go. They don't have a bye week anytime soon. They already had theirs, so it's probably over for that. He probably sits against Texas, plays against South Carolina, and then we just have to hope he stays healthy because that's the only shot that they have to finish out with maybe just one loss,
Right.
maybe two. So
At number six, I'm going Alabama. Like I said before, I really love what I'm seeing from them. The hottest team in the country to me by far. They look like the one team that you don't want to run into. Looks like that Florida State game was a good lesson for DeBoer and that whole roster in general. They needed a kick in the ass, especially after last year, ending the season the way they did, 9 wins, losing to Vanderbilt. And now Vanderbilt, they talked a lot of crap before that game, and I think Bama took it personally. Vandy started out really hot in that game, and it almost looked like it might be a repeat of what happened last year. And then Ty Simpson turned it on. Everybody on Alabama's defense kind of went up a notch, and they're showing why that even the reputation of Alabama might be down a little bit, that this team is still full of guys who can really play. There's a lot of league guys on that defense, and I think they just keep on winning, and they're just going to keep plucking off names, and they might end up in that top four of the college football playoff rankings when it's all said and done, especially if they can win an SEC championship.
I would agree with that. I don't know that there are five teams better than Alabama right now, and I'll get to where I think they are on my list. But we saw Vandy do what they did in the first half, and then they didn't score in the second half.
Right.
And then I think to your point of taking it personal, Alabama went ahead and I thought I had Vanderbilt to cover this game. We'll talk about our bets later on. And that friggin' last second touchdown was like, I think everybody knew like we're gonna cover these boys too. They could have easily taken a knee in the red zone. And they went for it. So I do think they took it personally. I think that that program has turned a corner, and it's like we know that not only that we're hunted, but we can hunt anybody we want to. We can beat anybody we want to. We'll go to your place. You can come to our place. I don't think it matters. So I'll get to where they are on my list. They are not at number six. I think they're a far better team than that. But they are certainly in the top 10 with pretty much anybody's list. For me, at number six is Texas A&M. This is a team that I don't struggle to believe in them. I feel like every week I'm like, I gotta see it. And then they do it. And then I'm like, well, damn, they did it. And so the way they played against Notre Dame, then they come back and win a sludge fest against Auburn. And then they play this weekend tough too. And it's just like there's nothing else I have to say about A&M that hasn't been already said. And there's nothing that they need to show that would make me think, oh, this team is, oh, now they're ready to win. They're a very solid football team, and I think with the combination of Marcel Reed playing at the level he's playing at, his weapons on the offense, and then how good that defense is, I think it's kind of sneaky how good they are.
They're
Mississippi State,
underrated for sure.
for sure. Mississippi State, I thought was a good enough team to go in there and cover that 14 and a half. Nope, stuffed them the entire
Yeah.
time. So I do believe in Texas A&M now. I'm a believer. When they play Texas, like that should be a statement game for that entire program. I That LSU game should be a statement game against Mizzou on the road. They have LSU on the road, bye week, Mizzou on the road. Like that's the chance for for Mike Elko to say, we're a top five program and we're not taking a backseat to anybody. We are as good of a program in the SEC as anybody else. So I really like them at six. It might be a little low, but I think their schedule will bear out like a lot of these teams, and we'll see where they end up at the end of the year.
Well, to go right back to back with Texas A&M, I have them at number five, which is
Okay.
AP poll also agrees with me on that one. Like you said, they just are kind of proving it every week. And good teams, they go into good matchups and they cover spreads like 14 and a half. And I called it, and I really do believe that they have the offense to do it. And I believe that they have the defensive line to keep up with any of these teams in the top 10. And so for that reason alone, I have them at five. Marcel Reed, who should get a lot more credit than he does. He's only a sophomore, so I believe that him having another year and some of these other guys just being older and on their last couple years out are giving more of a Heisman favorable nod than he is. But I think Texas A&M is legit, and we haven't been able to say that even when Johnny Manziel was there. This is really the best Texas A&M has really ever looked in this kind of new era of their program.
Well, that and Mike Elko was just a perfect hire for that
Yeah.
school and that program. And it didn't sound like it. And we'll talk about James Franklin in a minute. But like you get a guy like Mike Elko, you match that with the NIL that they have down there. You match that with the culture that they already have. And then Texas A&M has always been able to recruit. I don't know what it is, but they've always been able to be a good recruiting school. So to match the play on the field with those recruiting classes that they've been bringing in for feels like forever, it is really fun. And for them to be a top two, top three SEC team, I'm watching A&M and Mizzou side by side, and A&M has the edge a little bit, but they both came to the SEC the same year, and so I'm going to keep an eye on that. I think it's worth looking at the direction Mizzou went or is going, and Texas A&M and where they're going. Both these teams are ascending, and they're showing like what was the Big 12 with the right recruiting class can compete with just about anybody. So that's really neat. I have Ole Miss at five for me. There's still a lot of question marks on this team when it comes to being consistent on offense. They handled LSU, I thought, pretty easily. They're going to probably beat the brakes off of Washington State this week. So I don't have anything to really complain about there. But I do think this team has some questions to answer. That defense just is okay. I think
Right.
LSU's offense stinks, right? And so I think when they
Mhm.
go and they go to Georgia the 18th, so next weekend, and that's going to be a hell of a game. Then they go to Oklahoma after that, and so I think we're going to get to see them play against two really good offenses that can score with them, and then play against a couple defenses that can stop them potentially. I do love Ole Miss. I'm sure you're a little higher on them than I am, but I think they really haven't been tested outside of LSU, which I just don't know how good LSU is right now. That Arkansas game kind of scared me a little bit, and they didn't play well against Kentucky either. So they're
Yeah.
sitting there at five for me, but I'm sure you like them a little bit more than I do.
And just a little bit more is right because I have them at four. And so I do believe that they are a lock to make the playoffs just with the talent they have on their team. Can they win the SEC championship? I guess we will see. It'll be nice to see Ole Miss, a different face than other than Georgia and Alabama in the championship game. I think it's just a great story, that whole team in general. Lane Kiffin's got them rolling right now. He's talking his shit deservedly. So
Yes.
I like them. Their defense could be better. Like you said, that LSU game probably didn't show as much as we would have wanted as far as a prove it game for either side of the ball for them. I just think LSU is kind of down this year. A lot of people talked about their transfer portal class being one of the best in the nation. Well, that stuff has to gel, and they have to build some chemistry. And it looks like LSU is probably a year away and a different quarterback away, a healthy quarterback away. We'll see what Nussmeier's on, but I think that team's like a year away from everything gelling. And so for that reason alone, I think Ole Miss probably has a couple better, more impressive wins in them during the season. It won't be against any opponents that are, I think, quote unquote, better than LSU on paper. But I think they've locked themselves inside the top five for the rest of the season, as long as they don't do anything stupid and get upset.
I agree. They are a really good football team, and they only, in my opinion, they have two, I think, difficult games left, and then a game against Florida. It's like still mess it up, and then a game at Mississippi State again. Don't mess it up, and they're right there. I'm looking at the SEC standings, and it feels like every time we say an SEC team, it's like these dudes could win they could be the best team in the SEC. Like going backwards, by the way, Florida isn't even the worst team in the SEC, which is just by the way they started out, but Ole Miss is kind of ranked as one, undefeated. Texas A&M, Alabama, Mizzou, Oklahoma, Georgia, and then you have Vanderbilt, LSU, Tennessee, all sitting right there. I feel like the SEC is just so top heavy right now, and just the way that they are, and like I think there are probably four teams that could win that conference, and I think that any one of these teams could get beat by any other one of these
Right.
teams right now, and it's just so
Yeah.
entertaining.
Well, I think that in the past we've seen Alabama, Georgia be a clear separator from the
Yeah.
rest of that conference, and then everybody's playing catch up. And now it seems like we don't have a clear winner of that conference yet, which is probably the best thing for it. I think in the Big Ten, there's one team that is clearly head and shoulders above everybody else. But in the SEC, this conference, who has really been backed by two programs for the past decade, and in three, depending on who you like, and that changes every year. And so I really like the SEC and what it looks like right now. Mizzou has a chance to win it. Ole Miss does. LSU is out, but Alabama is right back in the race. And then Texas A&M, who has never won an SEC championship, they look like they could very well win it on the right day. So I mean, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama, those are 4, 5, and 6 for me. Those could be intertwined or interchanged at any moment this season, and they probably will as the weeks go on.
I agree with you. My number four team, and we're gonna jump out of the SEC for a second, I'm gonna go to Oregon at
Hmm.
four. Um, I didn't anticipate having them at four when I was making this list like last week. Like I don't know where I put Oregon, but then I watched what Penn State did, and I was just like,
Right.
I don't know. I know Oregon's a good football team, but when it got tight, so did they. And when it got tight and Penn State had to throw the football, they gave up a lot of yards and a lot of points. And so they haven't been tested yet. Indiana's going to be, I think, a really good test as well as far as like checking out that secondary. But their strength of schedule all of a sudden gets put into question a little bit just with what they've played so far. And I do think that there are three football teams better than Oregon. I think there are three football teams who would be favored to beat Oregon on a neutral field right now. And so for me, number four is Oregon.
I like that pick. I mean, I think we're kind of trailing each other at this point. At number three, I have Oregon. And
Mhm.
for that reason alone, they look clearly better than Penn State.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't look better than Ohio State, but that separator is kind of becoming very clear. Dante Moore, I still think he's the best quarterback in the country. Yes, the Heisman odds fluctuate based on stats and based on like who plays and whatnot. But I like Oregon just as a team. Dan Lanning, it seems like he feels like this is the roster to finally push him over the edge and at least get into the national title game or get into that Final Four. They have Indiana. I think they handle Indiana at home pretty easily. I actually think that's a game that could possibly get away from Indiana. And we're talking about Oregon being up 21-3 at half or something like that. I think they're going to try to push their weight around. And Dan Lanning is a coach that, he's going to try to stick it to Cignetti a little bit. Like, you think you can come in here with your this Indiana Hoosier red stripes and you're going to come in here and dominate and push us around a little bit. He's going to be sending a message, and he's going to make it very clear that he thinks that Oregon is the best team in the Big Ten. And to prove it right now against Indiana is the best shot that they have. And so I could see that game getting out of hand pretty quickly, and I think Dan Lanning is trying to do the same thing.
I agree, and I love Dan Lanning for that. The fact that he is just like everybody hates us, everybody's against us. That Tom Brady New England Patriot feel, where it's like you're obviously the best team, but you feel like you're the worst team. I love that. I do hope Signetti goes in there and he makes it a tough game. I think that he is a guy that could be up for some of these jobs that could come open, and I would love to see him make that move. I don't know that Oregon is going to beat the brakes off of Indiana. I don't know it's going to get away from them. Indiana has been in this spot again against Ohio State, like in the playoff, Notre Dame. Like they've been on the road now and they've been tested before. I think this is a chance for him to say like Iowa game was kind of a fluke. We're going to run it back. And at Oregon, we're going to do some things on defense that confuse them. And then we are going to attack that secondary because going into the season, yes, Oregon was like favored to be a really good team as far as like rankings go.
Right.
But everybody kind of felt like this is a rebuilding year for Oregon. Yes, they have a really good quarterback. Nobody knew how good he was, but everybody felt like last year was kind of the chance. And then this year, it's like this is a bridge year into the following year, and they're going to be really good next year. And so they're a little bit ahead of schedule. I think this is the first chance that we're going to see another elite quarterback really dial something up against Oregon. And I wouldn't be shocked if it was 14-3 after the first quarter. Indiana's up, and now we have to
Mm.
watch Oregon battle back, and they might win the game. I'm not saying that Indiana will upset, but I think it could be a really interesting and fun one. So I don't disagree with you. I just have at my third spot Alabama.
Wow.
I
Wow.
think I don't know that there's two teams who would be favored against them. I think if they played right now, I don't think anybody else would be. That Florida State game, first game of the season, like I don't know what that was, but it was what it was. It was a loss. It's fine. Then they go on the road and take down Georgia, the longest home winning streak in the country.
Hmm.
And then they bring in Vandy, who's undefeated, playing really well. I don't know that anybody has a more impressive resume as far as wins than Alabama right now, considering Georgia on the road and then beating an undefeated SEC opponent at your place, like the next, well, following week after a bye. So for me right now, Alabama is the hottest team I think in the country. I think they have the wheels greased very well. We'll talk about one team next or in the coming picks that I think is a little better than them, but I don't know that I would pick anybody to beat DeBoer at Alabama. I don't know if I'd pick against DeBoer if the game was like a heads up at a neutral site. I just really believe in what they're doing, and you can see Ty Simpson and that leadership is really like kicking off for them. And I think they're peaking at the right time. I think if they stay healthy, like it's a scary team. They could be a top four team for sure.
Yeah, I'm not mad at that. I think Alabama, like I said, between Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama, those teams could interchange at any moment, and that would put Alabama in the top five for me. So don't disagree. At number two, I'm going with Miami. Now, I really wanted to put them number one, but I just think Ohio State has kind of separated itself from the pack as far as how good their offense is. Jeremiah Smith, Cornell Tate, they got Bo Jackson, the true freshman running back, who's probably going to take starting reps away from the rest of those guys on that roster. And they just look like, Julian Sayin is on track to have one of the most proficient years for a college quarterback ever. I'm not saying that he's the best because I don't even think he's a top five quarterback in the nation, but you put that talent around him, plus all those All Americans on defense. I mean, they're as good as advertised and they're as good as everybody thought they were coming into this season. They might even be better. I still think Jeremiah Smith, the best player in the country. I almost think that he's not even trying sometimes out there. It's not saying that he's playing not to get hurt, but it's almost like he could go up a notch and he's just choosing not to right now. And until games get a little bit heavier, then he will. But Miami right now, with Carson Beck playing like a top Heisman candidate, for me, he would be in the top three of the Heisman race right now. Ruben Bain on defense, who is quietly, a Heisman favorite, one of the better players on defense with Caleb Downs. And then you have Malachi Tony, the true freshman who just had 7 receptions, 107 yards, and 2 TDs. He looks like he's next true freshman up that could be a superstar in college. So they have everything rolling right now. And this is the best I've ever seen Miami look really in my lifetime. I wasn't around for the early 2000s Miami teams with all those pros on it, but this is the best version of what usually is an overhyped Miami team every single season. They look way better than they did last year with Cam Ward, and that team was pretty special up until the end. So, hats off to Carson Beck. I really like what they're doing down there, and they're gonna be a lock to get that first round bye for sure. Especially with the schedule that they have coming up. They don't have a single opponent that I would even fear for. At the beginning of the season, I would have said maybe Syracuse. Beginning of season, I would have said maybe Virginia Tech, but now they have Louisville, Stanford, SMU, Syracuse, NC State, and Virginia Tech. I mean, I think that they have a chance to just kind of sleepwalk into the ACC championship. And then at that point, you could see something unprecedented. Like maybe guys are playing for Heisman's, but I could see Miami sitting some guys out in that ACC championship game. Now, I don't think anybody's going to do it, but I could see a situation where Miami has their spot locked up and they're comfortable with what they have. And yes, they might want to have an undefeated season. Of course, that's special for everybody, but they're rolling right now. I don't think there's anybody in ACC that can touch them at all.
That would be a very Mario Cristobal type of thing to
Yeah.
sit your guys out and they lose steam and they lose in the first round. I have your picks inverted. So I have Ohio State at two, Miami at one. The
Mm.
reason I have Ohio State at two is I like seeing teams prove it. In my opinion, the most impressive win that Ohio State has is on the road at Washington. That game, the first game of the year with Texas at home, they scored 14 points. I didn't think that either team looked all that impressive. I thought Arch really struggled. I thought Julian Sand wasn't like as sharp as he could have been. It's his first game, first time starting. So, but then like you play Grambling and then you play
Mm.
Ohio and then you go to Washington, you handle business. You handle business with Minnesota at home. And so they play Illinois at Illinois. So that'll be an
Right.
interesting game. That'll be probably another time that their secondary can get tested. I just don't think that offensive line for Illinois is any good, but we'll see. I have Miami ranked at number one because I just don't think there's another team clicking at the same rate that they are. I think if Ohio State and Miami played right now, that game would be so unbelievably close and such a great game that I don't know if I would be comfortable picking Miami to win. But I just feel like their quarterback, their receivers, their defense, that defensive line, it's just playing so well. And they've played against a couple of opponents now that I feel like, okay, I can slide Miami a little bit ahead
Right.
of Ohio State. I look at Notre Dame as being the best team that Ohio State or Miami has played. And then I look at Florida being maybe the second best team that either one of those teams have played so far. And so I've seen Miami do it multiple different ways, running the ball, throwing the ball on the road, at home, that I'm comfortable putting them at number one. I just think they're the best team in the country today. And that could change in 2 weeks if they play terribly against Louisville or something. Like, things happen in college football, but right now they are my number one team.
I like it. I mean, Ohio State and Miami, like I said, they could flip flop, and I
Yeah.
wouldn't be mad at it at all. Even if the AP poll decided to switch those two teams, seems like they've been doing some weird stuff all season anyway. But I mean, I think Carson Beck has definitely solidified himself as a top five quarterback this year. And you go from a guy who, like we said a while ago, he was perennial number one pick for a lot of people. And then he fell off the face of the earth for most experts. And then now he's kind of on his redemption arc and he looks like he's, a top overall pick again. I don't think he's going to go number one. I do think Mendoza's a little bit better than him, but the way that he has his team playing and believing, they're clicking as they look like a team that's supposed to be in that semifinal
Mhm.
matchup college football national championship game. Like they just look like that team. They pass the eye test on every single level, and that team is only going to get better. And they're going to be playing against these weaker teams that they can just sharpen up against week by week. And so I really like them. The first time I can really say that I really enjoy watching a Miami team and not sit there and call them overrated just because ESPN ranked them in the top 10 just because.
Well, I mean, you see Mario Cristobal is a great recruiter, obviously by the
Yeah.
guys that coming in, transfer portal, true freshmen playing. It's so good for the sport of college football for Miami to be good, for Florida State to be relevant. Like I've got my Southern teams, I've got my SEC, I've got my West Coast teams that are decent, I've got my Northern teams who are okay in the Big Ten. So I got like, if you're a regional fan, like you have somebody you can cheer for and feel comfortable with and want to tune in and watch. I think that's great for the sport. So I'm happy Miami is really good. Florida State could have been that too. They just had a weird game against Virginia and then they lose to a better football team. And we can talk about Tommy Castellanos and that experiment because against Alabama, we were like, might be one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And now I'm kind of like, we'll see where he falls.
Right.
But yeah, Miami's I'm just so glad that they are good. It is great for the sport. And I couldn't be any more happy for Carson Beck. I called it before the season. I thought he was just going to have a redemption. You can't have a horrible run game, a horrible offensive line, and have your receivers lead the country in drops, and somehow you're a bad quarterback. It just didn't make sense. And so for him to be playing at the level he's playing at and to just be dealing the football all across the field, it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you'd love to see that.